Hi there, I'm Zach. I'm 27 years old, and I am from so many places. I have grown up in eastern Massachusetts. I have lived in Vermont. I have lived in New Hampshire and Connecticut, but for now, I have finally settled down in New York. I have been with my current job for just over a year. As for schooling, I have a Bachelor's of Arts in Computer Science and Computer Information Technology. Um, I have no other schooling outside of that. And when it comes to special licenses or certifications, all I have is like my driver's license. um, as of right now, I make 28K a year. Um, and I don't really own or rent my home. I guess you could kind of say I rent my home. I reside on the same grounds as my work does. Um, and I guess part of the reason why I'm able to be here is because I work here. Because I work here, I can live here, and that's part of the deal. And for that reason, I suppose I pay nothing monetarily for my housing, but I guess I pay for my housing and the work that I do. I am currently single, um, ready to mingle. I am a polyamorous gay man, um, but I just not in a relationship for right now. I don't have any pets, but I would love to have a pet. Um, I feel a special connection with dogs. And I recently saw that a rescue nearby had like 20 American Staffordshire Terrier puppies, uh, like 20 staffy puppies. And, I was really taken aback because I was there for a different reason. I was rescuing a bat or two that was found on the grounds of my work. I dropped them off there. Um, but God, the idea of having a lifelong companion or a companion that is with you for a long time in the form of a dog is um, exciting. There's like something special about uh, taking care of something that relies on you and something, an animal that relies on you and loves you unconditionally. When it comes to food, I am normally fed by my work. Um, uh, I, 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 though I do spend some money on things that are just for myself. So things like milk um, for my lattes, um, tea that I can have in my own little dormicile. Um, and sometimes like snacks for the winter when there's not a lot of food when there's not a lot of food going on at my work. Sometimes snacks for the winter um, when there's not a lot of food at work. When it comes to my diet, I do not eat the healthiest. Um, I love to eat. Food is a lovely activity that I like to participate in. I love my desserts. I love my meats, and veggies make my tummy hurt. Um, I guess I'm only as healthy as the food my work makes, which when it comes to politics, um, I wouldn't really affiliate myself with either party. I would consider myself more of an independent. Um, am I proud to be an American? No. Um, I think there was one time in history when America was a place that you could be proud of. Um, but things are really deteriorating here. Um, my generation, Gen Z, is the only generation in American history that, at about 30 years old, are not better off than millennials, Gen X, the silent generation, boomers. Um, Climate change is continuing to devastate parts of our world. Summers are only getting hotter, and we seem to not be doing much about it. Um, we are slowly stripping away social safety nets. We are kind of embracing the futility of trying to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, which, if you really think about it, is impossible. I mean, someone can be only so skilled, um, someone can be only so lucky, but you need to have talent, skill, and luck in order to make it, to be able to really pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And the reality is, people work hard every day. They slave away in factories. They give you your coffee in the morning. They are people that deserve so much more. And no matter how hard they work, they're not going to be able to afford a house. They're not going to be able to afford savings. Like 70% of Americans, I think, are living paycheck to paycheck. Um, so am I proud to be an American? No. I wouldn't say I'm really religious. Um, I have gone through a lot of stages in my life. I remember that when I was a kid, like around 10 years old, I was told that Santa Claus wasn't real. And I was already kind of like having doubts, like how could that really work? How could like one man deliver presents all across the world? And I kind of had that same thought process about God too. And when I learned that, I mean, when I learned that Santa Claus wasn't real, I had to really think, is there really an invisible man in the sky who's watching over us all the time, judging us for what we do? So the answer seemed so clear to me that probably not, or maybe that we didn't know exactly what it was. So I went from atheist to pagan Wiccan to atheist again. And as I grow older, I realize that not everything is so cut and dry, black and white. So I don't have any sort of faith, but how in the world would I know if there is a God, if there is any sort of divinity, or is there not? So I would consider myself agnostic when it comes to religion. So when it comes to places I've traveled to, I have been all across New England. So I've visited Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New York. I would say I have like a good knowledge of those states. I've gotten to know those states a little bit, but I've also traveled to Virginia. I have traveled to Pennsylvania, Florida. I've had the fortune of going abroad also twice. Once to Mexico, to Cancun for my brother's wedding, and another time to Canada to visit a friend in Toronto. I gotta say, being able to travel outside of the United States and seeing how other people live, how different systems work, has been it's given me a lot of perspective. One of my favorite things to do, this is actually a really hard question. I'd say probably one of my favorite things to do is going on a long drive, and having an audiobook playing at the same time. For example, recently, I live in a rural area, so there's a lot of traveling by car. And I've been listening to the Wheel of Time series, and I have gotten to the 12th book now of the 13 books, and being able to kind of experience that story while I'm also driving. It takes mind off the drive, and honestly, seeing how beautiful nature can be and the Americana of the countryside and of cities is also really fun. What's something I wouldn't do even for $10,000? What is something I wouldn't do even for $10,000? I would not compromise my values. Money can be a corrupting influence, and I consider myself very existential, of like the philosophical bent. It kind of is what gives me meaning in life. So I don't think I'd want to compromise that even for $10,000, even though that would make my life a lot easier. If I could change three things about myself, I would say I would want to be more motivated, which is kind of funny to say at this point, because I've reached out and tried to do a lot of the things that I want to do with my life. But, just those times when it's hard to get moving, to get started on stuff, when you haven't had your coffee or you're feeling hungry, it can be quite rough for me to get started. I have ADHD, so I have that whole that whole difficulty getting started with things. But I do have the hyper focus bit, so to get started, I can really zoom in to what I'm doing. But what else would I change about myself? This is also really hard. When it comes to, I guess I would want to change my ability to spend. I can have a habit of overspending, and it kind of bites me in the ass sometimes, but I don't. And something else that I would change about myself would be my beard. I am actually quite self-conscious about it. I worry that it doesn't grow up high enough on the sides of my face, and that it gets too patchy. It's been really intimately tied in with my perception of myself and my masculinity. So I feel like having a more full beard would really help me get a little bit more confident. I know it's kind of silly, but I idolize my brother. His name is Tim, and I've always looked up to him as a role model. And he's doing really well. He's happy. He just had his first kid. The thing that I've always really admired about him was his ability to really go after what he wanted in life. He was able to stand up to my father, which we all had a rocky relationship in my childhood. He decided to become a really high-ranking wrestler in high school. He was one of the best in the country. And he has always been so strong. He suffers from anxiety disorder, like most of my family does. And I've heard about and talked to him about his struggles, and he has been through a lot, and yet he's still here. He's still here. He has a lovely wife. He's married. He has a child. And he's worked for everything that he's ever wanted. And I think that's a hope that I keep in my heart, that I can kind of go after and get the things that I want out of life. My biggest pet peeve is when I'm sitting down using some technology and someone is over my shoulder. Whether I'm on my phone or on the computer, just something about like feeling that presence right behind my shoulder and that silent observation of whatever it is that I'm doing. I don't know what it is. makes me angry. I'm like, hey, can you please can you please not be there right now? That's something that really bothers me. Most people seem to understand, but growing up in a house with 6 people in it and like maybe a total of 5 rooms, and only one computer, you can probably imagine where that pet peeve came from. So when it comes to my favorite genre of music, I'm definitely a indie folk kind of guy. I would say probably my favorite band is Fleet Foxes, and I discovered them while I was in high school. And God, I have such an interesting relationship with music. I I actively disliked the concept of music, all music, until I was around 10, 11 years old. I found it bothersome and noisy. And even when I was a young kid, if I had the agency to ask my mom to say, "Hey, please, can you turn off the music? I just want to listen to the wind," I would. So, but around high school is when I discovered how nice music can actually be, and I really tried to avoid that feeling of fabricated music created by industry factory producers that are engineered to make people, as many people like them as possible, by using certain lyrics or chord progressions or stuff like that. It just felt really not genuine to me, and perhaps that was something that contributed to my dislike of music in the first place. But when it comes to indie folk music, I listen to a lot of music, but when it comes to indie folk, I can normally tell that it's written from the heart, and that it means something to the artist who's performing it, who have written it, or who has written it, and yeah, and I'd probably say my favorite song by the Fleet Foxes is their first song from their newest album, I'm All That I Need. There's a lot that I could get into with that. When it comes to gardening, I really enjoyed what little gardening I have done in the past. A couple summers ago, tried to have my own garden on the porch where I grew like basil and mint and other herbs, and I tried to grow like onions and stuff like that. Only really the potatoes came out, and slowly but surely all the herbs I planted died. I kind of have a black thumb, but other than that, I like the idea, but I hardly have the time to get to it, it feels like. How do I feel about artificial intelligence? As someone who is trained and knowledgeable in the areas about technology, computer information technology, and computer science, I am kind of fearful when it comes to artificial intelligence, because not necessarily like of an AI takeover, but the internet where AI is learning from the majority of the time is full of misinformation, where like humans might be able to pick out when something is sarcastic. I think there was a recent experience on like Bing or Google or something where if you typed in a question and you also put in Reddit at the end, there's like a little AI pop up, and it would give the worst, most obviously facetious answer found on Reddit for that question. And it could be really dangerous if somebody were to use that for actual informative purposes. I think AI can be the worst reflection of humanity if not maintained properly. And I think as long as we don't put AI in control of any important systems, like weapon systems or something like that, I think we'll be fine when it comes to, like a Terminator-like scenario. But I do worry about its effect on society, what kind of jobs it'll take, what kind of misinformation it'll spread, and the humanization that people can give AI. Because as it works right now, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Chinese room thought experiment, but after a certain amount of training, it goes, whatever input you give in to this dark room where the person inside has no knowledge of Chinese, and you write a Chinese character, you give it to them, they would have eventually, after getting positive or negative inputs, give appropriate outputs. Because this person doesn't understand Chinese. This person doesn't understand writing systems or meaning or like many concepts in Chinese, but the output appears correct. So when ChatGPT has really human voices on their mobile app, reading their reply to you, complete with like uhs and natural speaking and pauses, it's kind of dangerous. There have already been people who have said AI is sentient, and while I believe that AI can eventually become sentient, that's not it right now. It is giving the appearance of knowledge while actually possessing none. Three talents I believe I have are definitely organization. I have a talent for organizational skills. That is something that I've had to rely on ever since my early days in school, because of my ADHD. It was touted back in those days as like a kind of cure-all for ADHD. And to be honest, it did help. But what it couldn't help was my absolute lack of passion for being in school and being educated. I I would only pay attention to classes that I was interested in and not anything else. And good luck getting me to do any homework, no matter how organized I was. I also like the analytical part of my mind. I think I do have a talent for picking up patterns and thinking critically about some things. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm human. There are parts of life where I'm not like fully there, not fully conscious. I'm just like kind of thinking about what's going on in my own brain. And I'm not fully present and I can miss things. But I have been complimented and employed for said analytical skills, and that is kind of what allows me to be a successful software developer, at least when I've worked that in the past. And another thing I think I'm good at is just holding space for people. I don't know what it is about me, but people feel comfortable sharing things with me. And that's something that I've always had to deal with in my life. And I recognize very deeply that people need someone or a place to just be able to share things and vent and have someone to trust. And I have grown to be that person because it's important to me. And that kind of leads into the next question.